professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chance with a professional. With Martin Sobo. A chance with a professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chance with a professional. With Martin Sobo.
Do you think that Baba Obasanjo could be on the stage while these Boko Haram people are doing what they are doing?
The objective of the private organization is slightly different from...
Nigeria is the most important country
of education. The collapse of culture in Nigeria. Even with cheating, we can't pass.
We've not done enough. There's still more. Join us.
And you never regret that you did.
The 2015 general elections have come and gone, and we have new government in place. The opposition now becoming a ruling party, and the SY ruling party now becoming, if you like, a major opposition. Today on A Chat to the Professional, we shall be taking a look at the 2015 general elections, the outcome, and of course, moving forward, the expectations of Nigerians, both in the private and public sectors of the economy from the new administration. Once again, we shall be hosting one of the regular faces on the program, but that will be after the break. My name is Martin Sobo, and I urge you to sit back now, relax, and enjoy the show. The 2015 general elections have come and gone, and now we have a new government in place, like I mentioned in my opening. But today we shall be taking a look at that elections. Now that the new government is in place, what are the expectations of Nigerians? Joining me to discuss this, among other issues, is a regular on this show, who is the Group Managing Director, Nanette Hotels Limited, in Akpabio. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Martin.
The last time you were on this show, we talked about the 2015 elections. Then, with events still unfolding, the elections have come and gone. I would like to ask you, what would be your review of that set of elections?
I think the elections went averagely okay. I say averagely because there's always room for improvement. But very importantly, we were able to start and complete that election process. And I think that's very commendable. It's a bit of a nuisance if you start a process and you cannot complete it. We were able to have in place a new president, and at the state levels we had new governors and a few governors that came back. So in retrospect, I would like to say that the elections went well.
We now have a new government in place, of course, with the opposition taking over. The then ruling party, the PDP, now has taken the backseat, perhaps becoming the major opposition. But looking at the economy, you will agree with me that most Nigerians are complaining. It is indeed excruciating, the pains that people go through. There's no food, there's no money, there's no fuel, and of course even the electric power supply has never been this bad, with both the government and private organizations performing far below capacity. So what would be your expectation, or what are your expectations from the new government, in terms of moving our economy forward?
I think let's start with the summary you gave, that things seem to have, everything bad has happened at the same time. I just want to remind the public that just before the last 6 months or thereabouts, Nigeria was enjoying a very robust economy. If you go back a bit, like a year, we see we were still delighting from the fact that we had the biggest economy in Africa, and so on and so forth. And so some of these issues that you mentioned are just things that have occurred very recently. And there have been a fallout of two major factors. One is the political process. The political process brought virtually to a standstill most economic activities. And unfortunately for us in Nigeria, this particular 2015 elections got prolonged because of the extension by 6 weeks. And it's affected us very severely in terms of commercial activities. But compounding that was the scenario of the oil price crash. And so when you look at political aspects and then you look at the problems of the oil sector, you find that the end result is what we are still experiencing now. No light, no food, no money, you know. It's like we are going through a very, very trying downturn. But having said that, a lot of these things, if you look at the inaugural speech of the President Muhammadu Buhari, he was very optimistic that a lot of these things are issues that can be addressed. And you know, since he came into power, he has hit the ground running. As we are speaking now, he's out of the country and pursuing one of the factors that has been so traumatic to many Nigerians, and that's the security issue. I want to stress that you can hardly do anything in this country, and any other country for that matter, without addressing the security within that country. Security of the citizens, security of those who visit this country, so that we can lead our lives in peace. And I think, and I commend the President, that has been one of the first things that he has really tackled head on. He has been able to have meetings with the security chiefs. In his address, he says he's relocating the command of the military to Borno State. And also, he has even visited neighboring countries who have assisted us on the fight against Boko Haram and other terrorists. So that is very, very important. Now we are still bedeviled by the other evil factor, and that evil is the lack of petroleum products, just as you have mentioned. And of course, that could bring the economy to a complete halt, which it nearly did. As you know, the petroleum sector affects aviation, affects heating, affects running of industries through diesel, affects transportation. And so there was a time, I think that's a week ago or so, the whole economy was nearly grounded. What we expect of the President is very simple. Let us stop going around the problem. A solution to non-availability of petroleum and allied products is very simple. Let us remove subsidy. Let us deregulate the downstream sector. Let it be as robust, as market-driven as our GSM sector. I have said it times without number, that if government had insisted on running the telecommunications sector of Nigeria and making sure it set prices for Glo, for MTN and other networks, we would be in the same position as we are now in the petroleum sector. And for some of us who are in the business world, we have always canvassed that there are very few things that can give the correct pricing than the natural laws of supply and demand. And for crying out aloud, we've suffered a lot in Nigeria. Even at the time when other countries were enjoying the benefits of a reduction in the price of crude oil, which is necessary for us to have the petroleum products, Nigeria could not even benefit from that because we had a fixed price regimen that was in operation. And so we are really not helping ourselves. So I would like the new president to tackle this as urgently as possible. I'm sure he has prioritized security, and after security, we hope he's going to look into the petroleum sector, and hopefully after that, he's going to look at the energy sector, because that's another area this new government must tackle head on. Let's look at the electricity generation of what we are suffering in the country. We have a lot that need to be done. I was looking at some of the inaugural addresses of a lot of the governors, and going through most of them, you hear them say, we want to industrialize our state. And then I also listened to comments by somebody, I think, I don't know if it's from England or thereabouts, and he was commenting on the economy of Nigeria. And he said the same thing that I'm also emphasizing. You can never industrialize without adequate energy supply.
Okay.
So I would like the incoming government to really focus on these issues: security, supply of petroleum products in adequate quantities, provision of energy, and also they can look at creation of jobs. Job creation will reduce the menace of terrorism. Job creation will reduce incidences of narcotics. Job creation will reduce a lot of indiscipline that we have, because people will be engaged in productive activities. And of course, it will improve and increase our economy. So job creation is something the government should really focus on. And I am suggesting a diversification of our economic activities, bringing tourism and agriculture and other areas that can earn us money. And then we also must look at maybe government engaging in new buildings, new enterprises that will directly employ a lot of our citizens. I recall that many times governments expand employment by engaging in commercial activities that can directly employ a lot of persons. So these are areas that the government can, impact as quickly as possible.
Job creation. You may have to hold your thoughts on that, but because we are going to have to take a break. But coming up, how can government create jobs in a modern economy? Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still on the show Chat to the Professional, and my guest remains the Group Managing Director, Chief Executive, Nanette Hotels Limited in Akpabio. Now, you talked about government creating jobs, and I'm wondering, in a modern economy, isn't it more fashionable for government to rather create an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive Because, you know, we already have an overbloated civil service, and we are talking about, you know, cutting down on cost of running a government in this country. So what would be your advice to the government to ensure that an enabling environment is created for the private sector to thrive, such that when we have more investment from the private sector, more jobs are created, rather than perhaps trying to figure out how government can, you know, further bloat the civil service that we've so much talked about and complained about in this country.
Yes, thank you very much. I totally agree with you. I don't expect the government at any level, be it government, local government, or the federal level, to think of increasing her civil service workforce. In fact, what we are going to see in this government may be a leaner government, and so there will be less persons working directly with the government. But what I had in mind is that governments can go into infrastructural development activities. When budgets are made, there should be a lot of emphasis on building towns, building roads. Those things directly employ people. Now, how it's done is left to the way government wants to do it. It can be directly, or it can be through companies, and that's where you have the public-private sector coming in to assist. I do agree with you that enabling environment is very important. That also leads to job creation. A little example is if government makes it easier for people to get access to money with less interest rates, people get access to money for longer periods, there will be a flurry of activities, there will be a lot of investments that will come up, and these investments will directly employ labor and get people off the streets and get them from the unemployment status. And so those are things that the government must look into. If you look at the budgets that we've been having over the years, there have been a lot going for recurrent expenditure. And we say we don't have enough for capital expenditure. And that imbalance must be corrected. As long as we can have more money going for capital expenses, more money that is going to develop the society, then we are going to have more jobs created. And lastly, I would like to see government as well complete a lot of abandoned projects. I keep saying that because I operate in the tourism sector, and I can tell you, if I take up Abuja just as an example, I can count up to maybe 50 or 100 abandoned guest houses built up to the levels of 70 to 80%, abandoned by state governments, abandoned by federal government, and so on, littered all over the place. And if you look at that alone, if these projects were completed and people were employed to work in these places, it will very much reduce unemployment. I'll give you a very small example. I go from state to state. I even discuss with state governors. And what do I tell the state governors? I say, look, you have this building. This is a 100-bedroom hotel. You've taken it up to 80% completion. Can we do a PPP arrangement? Give us the building, we source for funds, complete it, employ people, manage and run it for you. And then we discover that the political will makes it impossible for governments or governors to react. You know, you come up with excuses that, oh, we are trying to investigate how the money was spent And if this investigation can span 8 years, we are trying to recover monies and so on. You know, they come up with a lot of things. And while this is going on, the project remains at that level. In fact, the project deteriorates and unemployment increases. And so I'd like to call on government at all levels, please, political considerations must be secondary to economic considerations. Without economy, you can't have politics. So we must take the bull by the horn. Governors must say, look, we must move from position A to B to C to D. And if they take these proactive steps, I can tell you that a lot will be done towards increasing the number of jobs that our young persons can take advantage of. Even, again, I'll give examples in my tourism sector. We have a lot of states that have so many acres of vast land. And again, because government do not exhibit the will to act quickly, you find that we have a lot of wasted potential. People are coming, they say they want to turn these places to tourism destinations, and all government needs is a way to draft a correct contract. All government needs to do is to monitor how these contractual obligations are met. All government needs to do is to look at the right persons qualified to go in, invest, recoup, and all parties, all stakeholders will be satisfied. And sometimes, of course, governments become tied down by sentimental reactions to purely commercial ventures. And so you see governors trying to get sometimes by proxy, they get some of the things that belong to government and run them down. Sometimes they directly give to their relations who have absolutely no idea on how to run these places. And in the long run, these things lead to greater unemployment. Because when you give persons who cannot run that particular businesses to run, they can't expand, neither can they sustain. And so we find them, you know, all over the country. We find this. I was running a fairly big hotel in one of the states of this country. And along the line, the governor took it back and gave it to somebody who had absolutely no idea on how to run such a commercial venture. And I can tell you, for the last 8 years, that place has been closed down. And a place that was employing maybe about 200 persons directly and about 1,000 people indirectly has ceased to exist.
Well, I'm sorry viewers, that's the much time would permit on the show today, but come next week, this interaction will continue. Keep a date with us. I'll see you then.
Chats with a professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chats with a professional. When smiles is all good. A chats with a professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chats with a professional. When smiles is all good.